On June 20th, 1789, deputies of the Third Estate were locked out of the assembly of the Estates General summoned by the king.
The Third Estate are then forced to have a separate meeting inside of a tennis court where they can take an oath to not separate until the constitution of the kingdom is established. This famous meeting became known as the tennis court oath.
On July 14th, 1789, the state prison, known as the Bastille, was stormed by an aggressive mob. This aggressive mob took hold of the Bastille, taking all of the weapons and gunpowder they could find. This event marks the beginning of the French Revolution and is today known as France Independence Day.
On August 4th, 1789, the National Constituent Assembly abolished the entire feudal system. The abolishment of the feudal system led to abolishment of manorialism and tithes. Manorialism is the system in which peasants were dependent on the land of their lord. A tithe was a paid tax to the clergy. On August 26, 1789, the National Constituent Assembly, formed by the National Assembly, published the Declaration of Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which contained the principles that inspired the French Revolution. The basic concept of the Declaration was that men are born equal and remain free and equal in rights. This declaration was served as the introduction to the Constitution.
Due to the increased price of food in France, many people were hungry, and so on the 5th of October, 1789, a crowd of mostly angry women began to form. They assembled at the partisan markets and would then march from Paris to the Palace of Versailles, where the royal family lived. They marched to the king's palace because he lived in luxurious comfort whilst the people starved. At some point in 1789, Marie Antoinette is believed to have said, "Let them eat cake," this being an example of Marie and the royal family's obliviousness to the starving population of France. The mob of 7,000 caught the attention of King Louis XVI and were able to persuade him into signing the Declaration of the Rights of Man into law. Although they were able to make King Louis comply, there was still some distrust from the mob, as they believed that Marie Antoinette will persuade King Louis to not sign the declaration, and so they did something unthinkable the next morning. The mob stormed through the palace, killed several guards, and then destroyed furniture in the room of Marie Antoinette. Shortly after the mob occupied Marie Antoinette's room, King Louis XVI made an appearance and had promised to go to Paris to sign the declaration into law, and so the protesters and the king would depart back to Paris together. In 1791, King Louis would restructure the government as a constitutional monarchy. Because of the restructuring of government, King Louis's power would diminish because he was now forced to share power with a constitutionally organized government. On June 20th, 1791, King Louis had decided to leave France and seek refuge in Austria because he feared for the safety of his family. In order to escape the retribution of the revolutionaries, King Louis and his family disguised themselves as servants and fled the Tuileries Palace. The king did not make it very far, as he was recognized the day after. The king and his family were then arrested in the city of Varnes. The attempts to flee the country would tarnish the king's reputation. King Louis was regarded as a traitor by the French people. In the year 1792, France was under attack by Austrian and Prussian forces. During this period, the French people viewed King Louis as a traitor for trying to flee the country. And so, on the 10th of August, 1792, thousands of Parisians laid siege to the home of King Louis, the Tuileries Palace, in order to abolish the monarchy in France. The Legislative Assembly would then place the king and queen under arrest to avoid any more violence. On the 21st of September, 1792, the monarchy in France was abolished, and France became a republic. On the 15th of January, 1793, King Louis was charged and found guilty of treason. On January 21st, King Louis was executed. Marie Antoinette was also charged and found guilty of treason. On the 16th of October, Marie Antoinette was executed on the same day as King Louis.
The period between September 5th, 1793 to July 28, 1794 was nicknamed the Reign of Terror. Before the execution of King Louis, the 16th, the Legislative Assembly would replace itself with a new political body called National Convention. The National Convention then created the Committee of Public Safety, who were meant to protect the new established republic against rebellion and foreign attacks. Maximilien Robespierre was among the 12 committee members. This committee acted as the executive government of France during the period of the Reign of Terror. In order to get rid of the thought of revolution, the committee ordered the arrest of an estimated 300,000 suspects, mostly consisting of nobles and clergy. It is estimated that around 17,000 people were executed during the Reign of Terror, and about 10,000 died in the prisons. On June 4th, 1974, Robespierre was elected to become the president of the National Convention. 6 days later, a new law was passed which got rid of a suspect's right to a public trial and to legal assistance. This new law saw an escalation in the amount of people being executed. There was soon a large amount of controversy surrounding Robespierre, and on July 27, 1794, Robespierre and his allies were put under arrest by the National Assembly. Robespierre was placed into prison, but the warden refused to jail him, and so Robespierre fled to a hotel. Many of his supporters would come to help him lead a new insurrection, but Robespierre refused. Robespierre attempted to commit suicide by shooting himself in the head, but Robespierre had failed and instead blew off a part of his jaw. On July 28, 1794, Robespierre and some of his followers were executed. Robespierre was silent during his execution because of the attempted suicide. These executions marked the end of the Reign of Terror. On the 22nd of August 1795, the Nation Convention approved of a new constitution which created a new power called the Directory. The Directory was led by 5 members known as the Directors. The Directory later became involved in corruption, financial problems, and political conflict. The Directory also became more reliant on the army in order to deal with foreign affairs. In early November of 1799, the Directory was overthrown and replaced by 3 consuls. The 3 consuls being Roger Ducos, Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès, and Napoleon Bonaparte. This coup became known as the coup of the 18th Brumaire and is regarded as the mark of the end of the French Revolution. The revolution in France was considered a threatening event to the other monarchies of Europe. Revolutionaries wanted to go to war because they believed that war would unite the country, and they wanted to spread the ideas of revolution to other parts of Europe. The French Revolutionary was lasted from 1792 to 1802. The French Republic was at war with several different monarchies, including Great Britain and Austria. Under the leadership of Napoleon, France was able to conquer a large amount of territory by 1802. The French Revolutionary Wars were successful in spreading the principles of the French Revolution. On the 22nd of August 1795, the Nation Convention approved of a new constitution which created a new power called the Directory.